Hi, this is Tracy with Miss Organized, and I wanted to talk about something that tends to happen to my clients quite a bit during the organizing process, and that is demotivation. And when demotivation happens, it could seriously hinder the progress made in a project, or it can derail a project so much so to the point that it never gets finished. And that's really frustrating. To start an organizing project and to not finish is a very frustrating thing. And I want to tell you one of the biggest reasons why this happens is because of mindset. And one of the things that people tend to focus on is how much work needs to be done rather than how much work was done. And the best way I can use to help people understand what that feels like is to use the analogy of driving to and from Vegas. That the first session of organizing is going to be like driving to Vegas, and the second session of organizing is going to be like driving home from Vegas. And a session with me is about 4 hours. Most of my sessions are spaced about a few days apart to hopefully no more than a week apart. And it's in that time frame between the first session and the second session where the most demotivation happens. Because again, people tend to look at how much work needs to be done rather than how much work was done. So when you're driving to Vegas, you're thinking probably more of all the fun you're going to have and the adventures and the stories, not the drive. Very much like the first session, you're thinking about all the transformation that's probably going to happen, how much better you're going to feel, how much things are going to improve in your life and in your home. That's the point of focus. However, when we get to the second session is thinking about all this work you still have to do rather than all the work that was done. Very much like when you're driving home from Vegas, rather than focusing on how much fun you had, and the adventures and the stories that came from it, the point of focus will be how much driving you have to do. And if you're hungover or tired, that it's even worse. So it's hard to focus on the good and stay motivated. So the first and second session are very similar to driving to and from Vegas. And when I help people understand that before we even begin, then they are aware it's going to happen, and it gives them an opportunity to work through it when it does happen. So I'm going to give you a couple of tips on how to keep yourself motivated during the organizing process. So when demotivation happens, you can overcome it so you can actually finish your organizing project. And the first tip is to take before and after pictures. Really important to take before and after pictures. For one, for you to be able to see the changes that happened in a photo, get it captured in a photo, because it's very easy to forget what it looked like before you started. And when you are reminded of what it used to be like, it's really motivating to keep going with the project because you don't want it to go back to that again. The other reason why it's important to take photos is because for some reason the results seem more dramatic when you're looking at it from the photo rather than standing in the space and looking at it through your own set of eyes. So I highly recommend that you take before and after pictures. I recommend you take it all throughout the process. Every time you start a new session, whether you're working with somebody else or by yourself, every time you start that project day, to take pictures before and after and keep them in, say, a Google Drive folder or wherever you keep your photos, so you can remind yourself of the progress that was made during that period of time. The second thing that you can do to keep your motivation high is to focus on your mindset. It's going to be really challenging to keep your mindset positive the entire time. Organizing does tend to be a draining experience, from emotional, physical, mental. It can be exhausting, and it can be a very up and down roller coaster kind of ride. And when that happens, the motivation tends to get lost. So the more that you can keep yourself into a positive frame of mind, the more you can keep your motivation up. So what I usually recommend my clients do is to try to find short little mantras that they can use during the process to keep them motivated. And one of the mantras that I tell my clients to use, it's about progress, not perfection. And when they can think about it that way, then hopefully that will give them the opportunity to be a little bit more patient with themselves during the process, patient with the other people who are also involved, husband, wife, kids in the house, whoever's in the house who's involved in this process, to give yourself some patience. Your house didn't get disorganized and cluttered overnight, and it's not going to get organized and decluttered overnight either. It is a process. So when you can look at it from that perspective, it will keep your motivation level high and lower your expectations of any kind of perfectionism that you might be placing on yourself. So try the best you can to keep your positive mindset. And maybe if you have to write it down in a journal, something positive to remind yourself of all the positive stuff that happened that day. And when you start getting demotivated and maybe a little lost during the process, you can go back and read it and remind yourself why you're doing this. So a couple things you could do to keep your motivation high is take before and after pictures and have some positive mantras that you can repeat back to yourself to keep your motivation level high. That's it for now. Thanks for watching.